What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Salt and Pauper video. Today we are going to begin our full Pauper set review for the Phyrexia All Will Be One set. But before we dive into that, let's make sure you guys understand the keywords and some of the new rules mechanics coming to the game. Okay, first off, we have oil counters. Oil counters are a new type of counter that will be placed on permanents and tracked. Think of it like charge counters or energy, similar to those type of effects. These creatures and or machines or artifacts mostly are going to have abilities that require you to spend oil counters to activate. Next up, we have a returning mechanic, Proliferate. For those of you who don't know how this works, I'll give you the exact text, but it is a keyword. It's an action that states choose any number of permanents and or players that have a counter, then give one additional counter of each kind that permanent or player already has. So for each permanent or player you choose, they get an extra counter of every counter they have. You don't get to pick a specific kind of counter to proliferate. Say that this player has a poison and an experience counter, right? Poison is good for you, experience is good for them. If you want to proliferate them, you have to give them both. So keep that in mind. It's a small interaction, but it might be useful to know about. Next up, we have Corrupted. Corrupted is a new keyword that is going to alter cards based on the amount of poison a player has. Corrupted triggers if a player has 3 or more poison counters, specifically an opponent. So you will see spells that have additional effects or better effects if your opponent has 3 or more poison counters. Speaking of poison counters, what are poison counters? Poison counters are a tracked counter on players that are given through Infect, Toxic, some other effects on cards that will just straight up give poison counters. But if a player ever has 10 or more poison counters, they lose the game. Think of this like an emblem. You just track them outside of life totals, and if they ever have 10, they lose. Speaking of ways to give people poison counters, Toxic. Toxic is a new keyword that is replacing Infect from older Phyrexian type sets. Toxic is a static number of poison counters this creature grants during combat. So a Toxic 2 creature, regardless of its power, in combat will deal its regular damage. In addition, it will also grant 2 poison counters. This effect does stack. So if you have a Toxic 2 creature and you give it Toxic 1, it will give 3 poison counters if it hits a player. Keep in mind, this effect does not use the stack. It resolves with damage, similar to Lifelink. It is not a triggered ability. How is this different from Poisonous? If you're familiar with that keyword, I mean, the long and short of it is it's not. Yes, technically, Poison was a triggered ability, so it resolved after damage, but there's not a whole lot of gameplay scenarios in which you're going to need to know that difference. But otherwise, it is the new way to give players poison counters. And lastly, we have a new rebel ability called For Mirrodin. For Mirrodin is a keyword found on some equipment in the set that creates a 2/2 red rebel creature token when the equipment enters the battlefield and then attaches the equipment to it. So think of this like the new Living Weapon. Living Weapon was an older version of a Phyrexian ability on equipment that made a 0/0 germ token and attached the equipment as it entered play. This is a 2/2 body at standard. So it is more expensive. You'll see a lot of the equipment in this set cost more mana than you would otherwise think they should. But they do come with a 2/2 creature automatically wearing it. So that is something to keep in mind. Alright, there's one last new thing to talk about, which is a new token type called a Phyrexian Might. These are 1/1 artifact creature tokens that have Toxic 1 and cannot block. Lots of cards are creating these. Sometimes they create it on ETB, sometimes they create it on death, but remember, these cards have Toxic, so they're going to deal combat damage and poison counters, and they can't block. So that's a really important thing to be aware of in this limited. That wraps up all the rules, guys. Let's go ahead and jump right into the color reviews. All right, guys, we're going to kick it off with the blue cards. Joining me is Josh, aka Mayo, on the internet. What's up, man? Ready
Oh,
to...
that's line? Line?
I hate that you do this as like a bit, cause it's people don't know that it's a bit,
Oh, sorry.
and I'm
I
and
hope
I'm
you don't
not
cut
I'm
this
not
part out.
I'm not I'm not
This
gonna cut any of this. This
good
is...
because taking out the explanation of it is really gonna just it's gonna
Oh,
make
you're right.
make
I
it
should
worse.
cut it out. Yeah, that's fair. Um, all right, we're gonna jump into the blue cards here, and we're gonna kick it right off with Aspirant's Ascent. This is a 1 mana instant. Until end of turn, target creature gets +1/+3, gains flying and toxic 1. I have mixed feelings about this card because 1/3 is a lot for
hmm
1 mana instant. Giving it a jump is also good, and giving it toxic 1 is just like eh. So like I look at this card very much like instant speed +1/+3 and flying. And comparatively, I think the closest comparison I can think of is like Shore Up, where it gets 1/1 and hexproof. So um this card's pretty good. 1/3 and flying for 1 mana is a lot, and 3 toughness is very akin to hexproof in a red filled metagame. So um it's very comparable. I'm pretty impressed here. I don't know if it's good enough, but it's pretty close. This is one of those things where like if it said draw a card, it would be bonkers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, instead of toxic one.
Yeah, or if it said
Yeah,
like scry 1. Like I would be
yeah,
down if this said scry 1. This card would be quite good, right? But this makes me look at like Delver and I'm like, maybe blue, cuz this will help you like jump a ninja to draw another card.
yeah.
Um
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not even reading the toxic 1 part. Like everything else on this card is pretty good, and I'm into it. What are your first thoughts here?
so blue is actually the reason why I think corrupted is going to be possible. And so
Yeah.
toxic is important on this, but I think that this is cost perfectly for what we've seen previously and
Mm-hmm.
how corrupted and toxic don't really have in terms of card design space, they don't really have a mana cost associated.
Yep.
They're in general seen as just, I guess, a drawback, or
Yep.
they themselves don't add too much. Whereas like Flash would add a mana cost or something.
Mm-hmm.
So this being +1/+3 and flying for 1 blue mana, that's right about what I'd expect for that, for mana cost like that. Um, I'd say it's similar to Triton Tactics, which is, I believe, an uncommon,
Yep.
which gave, I think it was Shroud as well, but I don't recall it giving a power toughness or
Mm-hmm.
boost, only toughness boost.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this card is just really solid, and like you said, the +3 is akin to hexproof. Um, Only if you put it on, based on the current decks we see, a creature whose toughness is higher than 1, then it is
Yep.
like real hexproof.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're putting it on a 1 toughness creature, then you're hoping they're not Galf blasting it. Um,
Yep.
but this is solid. I would like this on, even just playing this on a creature with toxic on its own
Yeah, because
is
it's additive.
still good. Yeah, yeah, it's just 2 instances of toxic 1, get 2 counters right away.
Mm-hmm.
And that lets the next card we're going to talk about get that much better, that much faster.
All right. Well, let's see what the next card is then. It's Bring the Ending. Which is an instant for 2 mana, a blue and a colorless. Says counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. Corrupted, counter that spell instead if its controller has 3 or more poison counters. So this is just a hard counter if you have Corrupted, which is very good for blue colorless. Um, yeah, just very good.
Mm-hmm.
This has um, God, what is it? What's the 2 mana counter spell?
Dispeculation.
No, not unless they pay 2. The counter CMC 2 or less, or CMC
Prohibit.
4 or less if you kick it. Yeah, prohibit. This has prohibit vibes to me.
Yeah.
Um, really big fan of this card. Um, this also ties into the lore storyline piece that I was talking to with Elspeth's sacrifice with the Silex.
Mhm.
Um, this is the moment. But yeah, this is pretty good. Again, I think it comes down to if you can trigger Corrupted consistently. I don't know if there are enough ways to do it, but this is definitely a pretty good payoff. And it's not bad without Corrupted, which is a lot of something else we've seen, which is cards for Corrupted are bad unless you have Corrupted. This is like an okay card without Corrupted, and then it's a substantially better card with Corrupted.
Yes.
And especially because Corrupted is logically going to take a couple of turns to ramp up, right? It's going to take you 2, 3, 4, turns to get Corrupted if you are really focused on getting there. So the counter, unless they pay 2, is oftentimes just a counter spell in those early turns. And then in the late turns, once you've actually gotten a few hits in with to stack up Toxic and get Corrupted active, it's a hard counter into the late stages of the game. So I think this card scales really well. I think it's appropriately costed. I'm into this. Bring the ending, good card.
Yeah, there's not really much else to be said about it. Like, it's sometimes going to counter something in the early game, and it's always going to counter something in the later game,
Yeah.
especially if you get more than one Aspirant's Ascent off on a creature.
Yep.
Then you're gold. But I do want to caution something, is that Bring the Ending is going to be better the faster you do get them poisoned or corrupted.
Yep.
And that's going to take more than one other card to do that. So you are dedicating a significant portion of the deck to making Bring the Ending good.
Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said about that, right? Because like at one point would you rather this just be a counterspell, right? Or what, because this this costing would lend me to believe that you want to play it in like a blue X deck, like blue white or blue green, maybe
Yeah.
blue black. Or even blue red if you want to go like spells matter, because I know we have like we have, what is it? It's like Volt Charge, the 3 damage plus
Yeah.
proliferate instant. So
Yeah.
we like this would lend you to running a multicolor deck, but if you're running a multicolor deck, you also have access to Prohibit, to Mana Leak, to Miscalculation, to Condescend, right? You have access to all of these single blue counter spells already. And if you need a hard counterspell, you've got counterspell already. So you've got real counterspell if you're not running blue X. So I don't know how many cards it's worth spending to make this card a counterspell instead of just playing counterspell. Because right now, with how much mana fixing we have, like playing counterspell in a 2-color deck is not hard. Kagates does it incredibly efficiently. Familiars does it incredibly efficiently. Right? Tron plays counterspells in some cases. Affinity plays counterspells in some cases. Like, it's not that difficult to make double blue with the mana fixing available in Pauper. So is the one blue kind of requirement additionally to running counterspell better than the cards you have to run to make this a counterspell? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on just to make sure I'm not getting, kind of lost in making this card good when I could just run a better card.
Yeah. Um, like I would. The problem, like the only thing I see is that with Bring the Ending, you want a 1 mana infect or 1 mana.
Yeah.
A blue creature that has the ability to put poison counters on them,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not really
There's
good
Glistener
ones.
Elf. That's about it.
Yeah. So we do have to be
But
thinking
Pauper
about
does
that.
have Blighted Agent, which is
It
a thing,
does.
and you don't have to trigger Corrupted with Toxic. Like, let's be honest, you can just use good old Infect. Um,
Absolutely.
and with things like Aspirant's Awakening, you can get more than one poison counter in an attack, And then like a single Thrumming Bird trigger turns on Corrupted. You know, you can use yeah, I don't know. There are certainly ways to accelerate that clock. I don't know if those cards are good enough on their own to justify running this over Counterspell. I think that's the big takeaway here. Is make sure that this card is not making your deck worse to make this card better.
Yeah. Yeah, make sure you're aware of which card you are building around and that the card is worth building around.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Chrome Prowler is up next. It's a 3-mana Phyrexian cat. For 2 and a blue, it's a 3/2 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature and opponent controls. I'll be honest. This is weird. It's nitpicky, but why does it say an opponent controls?
Because it doesn't say or untap.
Then just say may.
Because, I don't know, cats don't mess with your creatures.
Just say when Chrome Prowler enters the battlefield, you may tap target creature. Why restrict this to opponents? If I want to tap my own dude, let me tap my own dude. Like, don't make it a requirement, but give me the option. Like, why is this taking the option to tap my own dude away from me? I don't know. It seems weird to inherently restrict an ability that could negatively impact you. Like, I understand they didn't want it to be a requirement because then flashing this in on its own wouldn't be a blocker. But just add the word may and it would be fine.
So I've got it. All right, I know the answer to all of your questions here. This card was probably not designed with actual in-person play in mind.
Yeah, maybe. I will say that flavor text is terrifying.
Huh. Yeah. All right.
But it's an artifact creature, so it's something to be aware of. It's a blue artifact creature, which is definitely something to be aware of. It's a 3/2 for 3 with flash. I mean, we've seen those before. Specifically, we had, what was it? The Demur agent with Surveil. The 3/2 for 3 with, it was like
flash.
double blue-black hybrid, one colorless with flash. So this is better than that because it's an artifact. And it taps something when it enters play instead of surveilling, which is probably more relevant. I don't think it's good enough. I think 3 mana is a lot for this type of effect, and a 3/2 body with flash is as good as they could make it without it being like completely disgusting, but I just don't care about Pestermite that much, and this isn't even a good Pestermite. Not in Pauper, anyway. Let's see. Next up is Escaped Experiment. Speaking of absolutely disgusting artifacts. Escaped Experiment is a 2/1 Phyrexian Beast for 2 mana, a blue and a colorless. And it says, whenever it attacks, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-0, where X is the number of artifacts you control. This card is crazy good. This card's so good.
To be honest, I consistently undervalue this effect, and I know that I do, but that 1 toughness is really painful.
I'm with you.
Like, you just can never attack into
don't like its body. But I will say that as a 2-drop, it's pretty good on a 2-drop. Because most of the time, you're going to go 2-drop, they're going to go 2-drop, you're going to attack, and they have to take the damage or negative trade. And then your next attack can whiff their 2-drops attack and make them trade down with their 3-drop if it can trade in. So, you get to pick and choose your battles very, very well here, and this type of effect allows you a type of control that is not often seen on a Magic card, which is to very reliably predict or dictate outright the blocks that are best for your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an incredibly powerful piece of information to have. Like, if you know how your opponent is going to block, you get 100% information. You get fully intact intel for declaring attackers, which is hugely important for tempo.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love Master Warcraft. All right, but why play Escaped Experiments over like the fairies that when they enter gives -1 or -2?
Because this is an attack trigger, which means it's repeatable.
Yeah, but
and this
is
scales.
an artifact deck going to be better than a fairies deck?
Well, I'm not sure that you're evaluating this as a tempo card, which I don't think it is. I think this card scales into combat very well, and I think it is a way to break mirrored board states.
Yeah, but I think that this card attacks once with impunity, and then after that it just sits there. Whereas the fairies that give the same effect when they enter, they just keep attacking.
But they don't
while
give the same effect while they enter. They usually give like -2, -0, which
Yeah,
is
-1,
which is very similar to the attacks with impunity at the beginning. So they keep dealing damage because they have flying. But the first attack for this card could be on turn 6, attacking into the opponent's 5/5 with a bunch of your creatures, right?
That's fair. So you're not valuing his damage only. You're evaluating when you attack, you're getting the damage of these other creatures.
I am usually aiming to use this card to like break a parity or race the clock positively. Like, say your opponent is trying to stabilize the control deck and just landed their bomb, and like, or say that we're on like say that it's like blue black turbo terror, right? Just landed its Gurmag Angler, and it's counting on like an unexpected Fangs to stabilize, which is a pretty common board state for that deck right now. This whiffs that out entirely. You're like, yeah, man, go ahead, block with your 1/6 with lifelink. That's not gonna win the combat. Right? Like, I think it has more value because it has scalability than the original ETB tempo cards. Now, the ETB tempo cards are good because they are recursive. You can bounce them with ninjas, you can keep playing them, but they have a hard stop at like 2, maybe 3 if you play one of the spells that's like -3, -0. But the fact that this can scale pretty much endlessly with your board state so that you can attack with a bunch of dudes, give, 1, maybe 2 things if you have 2 of them out, -5, -7 with artifacts, that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
To make it effectively a wall, which lets you attack with impunity with a lot more than just this. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something there. I don't think this card is like the end-all be-all. Affinity's not going to windmill slam this into the deck list by any means. But I definitely think this card will tilt combat into your favor a lot more often than you think it will. Like, there are going to be board states in Limited when people play this set where their opponent is going to land an Escaped Experiment on like turn 5, and they're just going to go, oh, that's bad.
That's fair.
Right, and I think that...
I assume you're never attacking with this into something like 3 blockers that they would have.
No, but keep in mind, in this format, mites can't block, so they have to block with real things.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think 2 is really going to be killing too much based on the butts that I'm seeing in this.
No, not at all. But I think what this is really going to excel at is if they have one big dude that can kill your biggest dude, you're just going to use this so that you can get your hit in.
The biggest dude gets in. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So. Or if they have, like a 4/3 that you can just turn into, a 1/3, and then you can swing in with a bunch of 2/3s and just get in damage without having to sacrifice your board or your tempo to do so. I mean, it's like that's not the best case scenario, but it's not a bad scenario either. I think this card's pretty good. I don't think it's like as crazy as a lot of people think. It's not windmill slamming into affinity. It's not going to have a huge impact on competitive Pauper, I don't think. But this card is going to absolutely terrorize limited.
I can agree to that. I think it'll be fine in limited, but it's not going anywhere that I can see in constructed.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think there are better cards for like tempo style decks. Like this isn't going in Delver, right? The fairies are going into the ninjas deck because you can rebuy them. So like I don't see this going in there anywhere. All right. Next up, Experimental Augury. 2-mana instant. Look at the top 3 cards. Put 1 in your hand. Rest on the bottom of your library in any order and proliferate. 1. Can we just give a quick round of applause for in any order, not in a random order? Thank you for making cards for Paper Play again. And then 2. This is like, am I missing something? This is just a better impulse, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
this is just
great.
Straight better impulse. Like there's no downside, there's no parallel, there's no maybes. This is like 100% upside just stapled onto an impulse, right?
Yeah, I will absolutely give up 1 card from impulse in order to proliferate every day.
No, absolutely. Because we've determined that the cost of a proliferate from Scars of Mirrodin was 4 mana.
with the contagion class.
With both the contagion types, 4 mana was because there were several artifacts that proliferated with a tap, and all of them cost 4 to do so.
Did the engine? I thought you proliferated twice with the engine, and it cost 6, or did it cost 6 to cast?
It cost 6 to cast.
Oh, okay, then you just proliferated twice when you activated it. Then.
Yeah.
So it costs 2 mana on rares.
But yeah, this card is very good.
Absolutely. Like, if there is a deck that has corrupted as a theme, or, toxic or whatever.
I think mono blue. I think mono blue, like Thrummingbird, is like a real deck. And instant speed proliferate is what that deck needs, and this is one of them for sure.
Oh yeah. Instant speed affordable.
Yeah, instant speed proliferate is going to be very important for that deck, and I think this kind of gets the job done there. But very good card. I'm excited. I'm going to buy some foils of this card for sure. All right. Next up, Eye of Malcator. It's a 3-mana artifact, 2 and a blue. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2. And whenever another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it becomes a 4/4 Phyrexian Eye creature until end of turn. Ooh.
So, I mean, not to nitpick, but did Scry 2 really need 3 lines of reminder text?
No.
Okay. Alright, so that's not just me.
No, definitely did not need the reminder text on Scry 2.
Alright, okay. I mean, like, I get it if they wanted to put it on something, like on a card, but maybe not something with as many lines as Riddle of Lightning has,
This very could have easily not had the reminder text and gotten flavor text, because this is a cool card and I would have liked to see the flavor text behind it.
Especially because the eye looks like it's violating an insect in the background, which is, I mean, while I don't want to know more about it, it would be nice to have context.
Right? I honestly, like, becoming a 4/4 passively is very good. Like, 4/4 is a lot. And you can activate it at instant speed with treasure tokens off Deadly Dispute to have a blocker. Like, this card's really good. Like, this might make the cut in Affinity good. And that deck is tight as that deck's card slots are crazy competitive. This could make the cut in that deck. Three mana Scry 2 is terrible, but then having a 4/4 when you want it is very good.
Yeah, I'm just, I like all of the words on there, but when you want it is difficult for me because it's not like there's really a good instant make artifacts.
Deadly.
It's not like there's a good instant that I could think of off the top of my head when I was saying that sentence. No, I mean a good blue one that I can.
Who cares if it's blue?
I usually do. I want it to be in at least the same color, just so that's not too far of a stretch.
If you're running it in Affinity, you're running Deadlies.
That's fair. You could run it in Affinity. What do you put this in over?
If I was going to immediately, just like off the rip, if I was gonna make a cut to play this, it would be over Kenku.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it.
And the reason I would play it over Kenku is because a lot of people are starting to bring things in specifically to deal with the indestructible creature. And that opens yourself up to additional hate that is killing your lands. Whereas if I'm playing this instead, they have to choose if they want to blow up my land or if they want to kill my threat.
That's fair.
And so because of just how the meta has adapted to Kenku and Affinity, where killing the lands is now like the optimum way to play against that deck again, people are bringing Dust to Dust back into the boards, and Revoke Existence is starting to target bridges again. This feels like a reasonable pivot where you can say like, all right, you got me. Kenku was greedy. You guys have adapted. The sideboards have come back. Kenku's not as good anymore because everybody just exiles the land. So I'm going to run something that doesn't let you exile the land. And even if you do, I can still have a threat. Because, I get to scry 2, so I get to find something to activate it with on the following turn if I'm dead out of cards. It instant speed activates on the block with treasure tokens from Deadly, and pretty much any time that you're playing the deck, you're going to be playing an artifact on a turn, either a land drop or the blood fountain or something. So feels fair to say this is almost always going to attack for 4 when you want it to, and it can surprise block for 4 when you need it to. Yeah, I'm a fan. This card seems quite versatile and really good.
I will say the one thing I'm happy about with this card, at least being talked about, is perhaps they'll take a look at the second part of Deadly now. The part that I have a problem with.
Nope.
And make a better decision. But,
never gonna happen.
Me. That's just me.
Never gonna happen. Alright, moving right along. We have Gitaxian Anatomist. It's a 4-mana Phyrexian wizard. It's a 2/5 for 3 and a blue. And when it enters the battlefield, you may tap it. When it enters the battlefield, you may tap it if you do proliferate. That is a weird ability. I'll just say it. That's a weird ability. What are your thoughts here? Because this is...
I'm not paying 4 mana for a tapped creature that when it enters. I'm just not. If I can handle it, if I can control it, I am not paying to have that creature enter tapped. But if my opponent has like something like Console of the whatever it is, the 1-mana white enchantment where my creatures enter tapped, sure. I'll pay whatever mana I have to for the creatures. But this, absolutely not. I'm not paying 4 mana for a 2/5 that just has no text on it, and I'm not paying 4 mana for a tapped creature that proliferates when it enters. It needs more.
Yeah, 4 mana to proliferate is apparently the right cost, but 2/5 that I am tapping out to play that probably needs to block so I don't die. This should just ETB proliferate, I'll be honest. Like, there's no reason to have to tap this. I don't see why it has to be that way. I really don't. Not a fan. This card seems bad.
I concur.
All right, great. Gitaxian Raptor, next up. It's a 1/4 flying Phyrexian bird. There it is again, that creature type. For 2 and a blue, 3 mana total. When it ETBs, it gets 3 oil counters. You can remove an oil counter, and it has the weird ability. So it can get +1, -1 until end of turn for each oil counter you remove. I hate this.
I have a thematic question.
Yeah.
Why is the cat, as a Phyrexian cat, an artifact creature, whereas this is not an artifact creature?
Well, let's see. Considering their reasoning for introducing oil counters was that the machines of Phyrexia use oil to survive and as a fuel source, I have no idea. Because the Phyrexian cat, the artifact, the machine creature, didn't need oil. But
Okay,
the
all right, well,
Phyrexian bird that isn't an artifact, that isn't a machine, does.
you know, that is about the most convincing argument I have heard. Let alone it's the only one, but you know.
No idea. Zero idea. I also just hate oil counters thematically altogether. I think it is a garbage mechanic. I am not happy with oil counters. They don't make any thematic sense. Yes, I get it. They're machines. They run on oil. But no machine in Magic's history has needed some sort of fuel source. They are animated through magic. Or Aether, or Algamancy, or whatever it is, Oromancy, and whatever brings them to life, but it's not oil. And if you were going to introduce an oil mechanic, it should have been in the Brothers' War, a literal, like, tinkerer war of 2 people that build mechs. Why are the living biological fusion Borg things relying on oil? That feels very imperfect to me. Anyway, other than that, I have no opinion.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah, but I'm not a. I don't hate that there are a type of counter on these cards that interact with them in the way that these counters do.
I hate
So
the
if you just
behind the name. If you called these charge counters, I would hate them way less.
That's what I'm saying. It's just imagine that it says something else, or just skip from the part where it says 3 to the part where it says counters. They're
No,
just
because
counters.
they
That's it.
straight up said that they were introducing oil as a mechanic because the machines run on it. Like, if they hadn't tried to explain that, I might have been able to accept it.
This is from a place called Wizards of the Coast. Wizards are famous for their science.
Anyway, cards pretty okay. Seems very mid. 1/4 in the air for 3 isn't bad at all. The ability to attack for 4, if you really want to, isn't bad either. More often than not, this is probably going to be a 2/3 that blocks, maybe a 3/2 that blocks, or a 1/4 that blocks a lot of the time. And then it's just going to kind of chip in damage as a 1/4. But there's like no room for this anywhere I can see. This is a limited card.
Oh, this is absolutely a limited card.
All right.
And
then
the
let's
good news
move on.
is, yeah, the good news is if you're swinging in, you could remove all the yellow counters right away. There's no,
Yep.
all of them except for one. There's one power toughness spell that I could think of that could kill it if you take its toughness all the way down to 1. But this card's swinging for 3 most of the time.
Yep. All right, moving right along. Glistener Seer is a 0/3 Phyrexian advisor for 1 blue. It enters with 3 oil counters. Again, not an artifact. And when you remove an oil counter, you can scry 1.
At least you don't have to activate it as a sorcery.
Or once per turn.
Well, I mean, it's a tap ability.
Yeah, and I'm surprised they didn't staple once a turn on the bird.
Well, yeah, but that's not a tap ability. You could feasibly do that more than once in a turn without other cards.
I would like this card a lot more if it was a 1/2 instead of a 0/3. I don't really like what they're trying to do with the Augur thing here, especially because Augur's like a 1/3. This being a 0/3 is like substantially worse than anything with 1 toughness. I would rather, or with 1 power, I would rather it have been a 1/1 than a 0/3.
I agree. I think the stat line of 1/2 is the best that we could get on a 1-drop. Well, I mean, outside of 2/2 for Goblin Guide, that was just that was peak. But
or 3/2 for Blast Runner.
Ignoring that,
0 or like 15/16 for Swift Spear.
3 is about the biggest you want to go on toughness for a 1-drop.
We have the 0/4 Kraken.
That's fair, but it has no other words on it.
Yeah, but that's just power creep. It can now.
All right, well, yeah. I don't. Yeah. If you're gonna have other words on a card, 3 is about the biggest you want to make it, sure. Because that's, I mean, 1-mana spells can deal with 3 toughness creatures.
Yeah. Lacking a power for me is really the deal breaker here. I think this is another limited card. There's no shot this makes competitive Pauper play.
Oh yeah, I agree. This isn't making it in.
Next up, Ichor Synthesizer. It's a 1/3 Phyrexian wizard for 2 mana, a blue and a colorless. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on it. And if it has 4 or more oil counters on it, it gets +2/+0 and can't be blocked. Once again, not an artifact.
But he runs on oil. And the more oil, the better he is. So that is nice.
I headcanon that this guy is just doing the oily pig strat, where he can't be blocked because no one can grab onto him. He just slathers himself in oil and runs at the enemy.
From Hey Arnold, huh?
Yep. He just slathers himself with oil and runs at the enemy and hopes that nobody can grab onto his cloak to stop him.
I'm reasonably sure that works with cotton. Yeah.
So it would be a 3/3 cannot be blocked. When's the fastest you could do this? If you play 2 non-creature spells that also proliferate on turn 3, you could have this activated and attacking.
So you would need 2 of those proliferate spells. What was the name of it? We just watched Experimental Augury. You need 2 of those and a Lotus Petal.
Well, that's not entirely true, right? Because you could just play like the Ascendancy or whatever
to get you 1 more mana.
No. You can do it with 3 mana. You play a non-creature spell for 1, and then you play a non-creature spell with Proliferate for 2. So, like, you can use the pump spell on this dude, or whatever, opt or preordain or whatever you want to do, and then the next one is the cantrip that, or the impulse that proliferates, or maybe just a regular 2-drop with proliferate on it, like the green one. And then this is a 3/3 that can't be blocked for the rest of the game.
I see what you're trying to say. No, you see, unlike the other cards that came before this, he needs 4 oil counters, not 3.
Oh, Jesus, it's not corrupted. No wonder I hate it. Yeah, that's fair. I don't like this. Why isn't this corrupted? You guys literally made up a keyword.
Or Phyrexians. Just throwing that out there, guys.
And it doesn't have toxic? and it cares about oil counters, and it's not a machine?
What
Why? I don't
What's
understand this set.
really
I don't get it.
confusing is that both of those mechanics, corrupted, toxic, right? That
Hmm.
grouping there, and oil, belong to Phyrexia.
Hmm.
The last time we saw Phyrexia, like as a large scale thing,
Hmm.
was on Mirrodin when it was 3 colors versus 2 and artifacts. So
Well, there were
they're
also
not being,
artifacts on the other side.
but um, they're not being that color divide or that faction divide of these specific effects is really confusing from a returning player or a legacy player, right? Like I don't care how many new tricks and things you give to Phyrexia, but I want more things like the Leonin Lightbringer that we had previously. I want there
Yeah.
to be some sort of a feeling that this isn't the Thanos movie. I it, this is feeling very much like we are just on the Phyrexian plane talking with only Phyrexians.
Well, we are.
But I want there to be something else in terms of the story of the plane. We saw Jace and Elspeth and these other planeswalkers that were there, but it's like I don't know, I really don't like the feeling that they're just there completely alone.
That's exactly what's happening though.
Yeah.
The whole
So
the whole
my
this
greater
is
problem is
very
with
much
the full set then.
this is very much the final fight in Matrix 3. Everyone is Agent Smith but Neo. That's what's happening.
You know what Phyrexian all will be one and the Matrix 3 have in common for me?
They're bad and I didn't like
I
them.
hated them both.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe you'll like this one. Next up is Malcator's Watcher, which is a 1/1 for 2 mana, a blue and a colorless. It is an artifact creature. It's a Phyrexian drone with flying and vigilance, and when it dies, you draw a card.
Nope, I hate it. It's on Phyrexia.
Yeah, but it doesn't require oil, it doesn't have toxic, and it doesn't have corrupted. All of these things just happen.
That's fair, but it's got the word Phyrexian on it. If it didn't have that, then this is a 10 out of 10. 100%. I love this card. And it's got that weird set symbol. Not a fan.
But it is an artifact creature, which kind of, balances it out.
You know, it only balances it out in the way a seesaw does, that it's on the left side of the card as opposed
Uh-huh.
to the right side.
Yeah, exactly. You notice the little line in the middle? That's the seesaw. It's in
That's
perfect
the
balance.
fulcrum. Is that what you're telling me?
It's in perfect balance. You can see
All
it
right.
right there. It's like a
Well,
level.
you can't say something like that and not count the letters in.
Um, Jokes aside, this card's very good. I will say that I don't like that it costs 2. There have been some calls out on Twitter that this should have costed 1. I think costing 1 is a little too free. I would have liked this to cost either colorless and then 1 blue Phyrexian mana, or blue and a second blue Phyrexian mana. So it can cost 1 and 2 life, but still require a blue, or 1 and 2 life and not require a blue. Either one, whichever they determined was better for balancing and playability. But I think we have Vault Scourge, and Vault's like lifelink and flying is substantially better than vigilance and flying. And the draw effect is when it dies. So, like, individually, paying 1/1 for a 1/1 flyer, or paying 1 for a 1/1 flyer is fine. Paying 1 and 2 life for a 1/1 flyer plus a keyword is fine. Um, and because it's not ETB draw a card, which would be completely busted, the dives trigger actually keeps that from being abusable very realistically. So I think this would have been perfectly fine at like Blue Vault Scourge. And it would have been very good and very playable, and we would have had an exciting new card for Pauper. But instead, we got this, and nobody's going to play it.
Yeah. if it were 1 and Phyrexian mana, which I suppose they learned their lesson with Phyrexian mana,
I'm
then this
so
card would
upset we don't have any
actually.
Phyrexian mana in this set.
Where do you think we are? Phyrexia?
Yes.
Idiot.
The set symbol is literally the Phyrexian mana symbol, and we don't have Phyrexian mana in the set. That drives me crazy. And yes, I know completed planeswalkers have Phyrexian mana. I get it, but we don't have any at the common level, which is garbage.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, is really just a benefit for the rules committee, as they don't have to ban any cards.
No, I just wanted blue Vault Scourge. It would have been fine.
Yeah,
You could have just cut Vigilance off of this card entirely and had it been a 1/1 flying artifact creature for colorless blue Phyrexian, and when it dies, you draw a card. Would have been fine and played and good. I will say that as far as art goes, no disrespect to the artist, Jason is a phenomenal artist, but the forced perspective and the angle that this Starone is at in the bottom corner of the art, the little wings or tentacles out to either side and the one going down look very distorted to me. Is it just me? Maybe it's just me, but those look very weird.
It's just flapping those tentacles back. That's how it flies.
Maybe.
They fly backwards.
Maybe. Anyway, moving on. Meldweb Curator is the next card up. It's a 4-mana Phyrexian wizard. For 3 and a blue, you get a 3/4 body. And when it enters the battlefield, you put up to 1 target instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna be honest. The first time I read this card, I was so excited until I got to the last 5 words.
Well, you say that, but they banned Mystic Sanctuary.
Yeah, I do.
This effect is very good.
I mean, they banned Mystic Sanctuary, but the
I don't think it's better than Archaeomancer or Mnemonic
of
Wall.
Course not. No, because he puts it on top.
Yeah.
There's another 4-mana card. It's a 2/1 flyer that's an artifact that is active that hasn't been banned. So it's not that Mystic Sanctuary's effect of putting the card on top was the problem.
It's just it's a land.
That was the thing.
I get it. I'm just saying the effect is good.
Yes. But you're not going infinite with this guy.
No, it's not better than Archaeomancer or Mnemonic Wall or Ardent Elementalist for sure.
Yeah, no chance. But
I like seeing more of these. I like seeing more of these effects.
Yeah.
Or Reliquary Scab. That's the other one. It's not better than that either. Which is funny because that guy sacrifices himself.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Next up is Meldweb Strider. We have a vehicle, funny enough. It is a 5-mana vehicle. Jesus. It's 4 and a blue for a vehicle. It's a 5/5 with vigilance. It enters the battlefield with an oil counter. And you can remove an oil counter and it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Or it has crew 3. So you get 1 free activation. Otherwise you have to crew it. This is how oil should have been used. This is a good use of oil. I mean, could it have been a charge counter still? Sure. Do I hate the fact that they called it oil and tried to sell it as the fuel source for the machines? Yes, but this is a good use of that type of ability. This is the only good use I've seen, but it is a good use.
Your argument with the oil versus charge counters, it's not like there's a precedent for charge counters in a previous Phyrexian set.
No, see, those were linked to Mirrodin, and that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it got completed.
Yep. Anyway, this card's it's too expensive to be good, but it's not bad. This card's going to be quite good in limited, I expect. Five
Yeah.
5 for 5 with Vigilance that has a free activation before you have to crew it is pretty strong. Especially one
Yeah.
immune to sorcery speed removal.
Yes. Sorcery speed creature removal. If
Well,
you had an O-ring
yeah.
style effect, you could still do this. Unless you block with it. Don't
Well,
block with this creature.
you could definitely put the new pacifism on it.
Oh no, you're right. Feel free to block with this creature. You're gonna lose it anyways.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it seems like Blue's Bomb, really.
Yeah, it does. All right. Next up is Mesmerizing Dose. Another pretty good card coming out. It's an enchantment aura for 3 mana, 2 blue, and 1 colorless. Enchant creature, when it enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature, then proliferate. And enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So this is a, what was it called?
We've seen so many claustrophobia effects.
Yeah,
I did not
claustrophobia.
even see proliferate on
Proliferate.
this card until you read it.
Yeah, it's a claustrophobia with proliferate, which is pretty good, I think.
Yeah, right. Especially in the blue deck that wants to get
Yeah.
the corrupted effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in favor of more proliferate keywords. Those that's good. I'm in.
Yeah, especially again because this one is actually free.
And it's a control spell. Like this is a
Yes.
board stall spell, which is kind of what that deck wants if you're going for the actual poison win.
Yeah.
And it clears the way for blockers so that you can, or it clears the way of blockers so you can get in for more poison.
Exactly.
Um,
And I mean, I've wanted Contagion Clasp to be
I'm
down.
so
Graded.
sad they didn't downshift it.
Yeah, like I want it to be downshifted
Me
because we need that more of the control style effect.
But there's no neg 1 counters in the set, Josh. We weren't allowed to have them. They were too good in Scars of Mirrodin. Apparently, it doesn't. It's just not a thing now.
That's fair. Yeah, their weapons they used were too effective.
No, I think
why they're
the
not
actual
using them
like thematic
anymore.
reason was that the weapons were developed to combat the living entities on Mirrodin. Now that Mirrodin has been completed, they don't need those weapons anymore, so they don't have them. Yeah, just let that sink in for a minute.
Look it.
Anyway,
I could go off on that for a long time,
yeah.
but I don't want to.
Next
right
up is Prologue to Phyresis, which actually is a fantastic card that everybody should be ordering foils of. This is a 2-mana instant speed spell. For a blue and a colorless, you get each opponent gains a poison counter, draw a card. This card's fantastic. This is probably the best blue card of the set.
Yes.
This gives a poison counter without having to deal combat damage. It draws a card. It's an instant. This could have very easily been a sorcery and been garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But instant speed is massive here.
Yeah.
I don't think this will replace Lightning Bolt in Flickertron because it costs 2 instead of 1, and it costs 7 casts of Lightning Bolt to deal 20 damage, but it costs 10 casts of this to kill somebody. I will say though, with lifelink and life gain so prevalent in the format, and Denrova Horror being so susceptible to removal, this might be a better, more consistent win con for Flickertron. And because it replaces itself, you can just cast it kind of whenever it fits, and then buy it back later once you've stabilized. Maybe run like 2 copies in the deck so that one can get exiled without you really worrying about it. The only thing I don't like about running this as a win con is you need 2 mnemonic walls to make it happen. Whereas before you just need 1 mnemonic wall, 1 ghostly flicker, and 1 creature with an ETB effect, i.e. Denrova Horror. But I do kind of like this as an option for that deck.
I mean, shit, I like this card at all. This is a really nice card. This is one of the 2 cards that you said you were thinking of when we were white. I was talking about a card that gives poison counter straight away. What I was thinking of is in black, but this card is easier to cast, and it does replace itself.
Yeah.
So this is most likely going to be the one that's in the deck that has the counterspell from above. The Bring the Ending.
Yeah, Bring the Ending. This is also the card that makes Thrumming Bird good.
Yeah.
Like, this card is going to accompany a lot of Thrumming Birds.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's the best card in the set. I think that's actually Experimental Augury still. But Prologue to
I'm
Phyresis,
not sold on
giving
that.
a win condition is really a solid.
I'm not sold that it's Experimental Augury. I think it is, in fact, Prologue to Phyresis, just because this is a win con and the other is a synergy. But that being said, I like both. I'm just excited that we have a way to put a poison counter on a player without combat.
Without hitting him with a Toxic Zero creature.
Or an infect creature. All right, next up is Quicksilver Fisher, which is a 5-mana Phyrexian Drake. It's a 4/3 for 3 colorless and 2 blue. It has flying. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. It is not an artifact, although whatever is in the art is very clearly an artifact. It literally says in the flavor text it no longer needs to eat. This thing is very clearly a machine.
You see, unlike the bird from before where it had feathers, I don't even know if that's leather between the wings as opposed to just thin sheets of metal. So
no, it's Quicksilver.
I had nothing. It's literally a Mercury dragon here.
Yeah.
And yeah. Well, it's not an artifact though.
Apparently not.
It's living metal. That's I don't know.
I don't know. All right. Card's bad. I think this is probably a finisher for like limited, but that's it.
Yeah, if you ever find yourself wanting to play this outside of limited,
should reevaluate what you're playing.
Yep.
All right, and last but not least for blue, we have what I wanted to be a good card. It is Vivisurgeon's Insight, which is a 5-mana spell, 3 colorless, 2 blue. It says draw 3 cards, proliferate. Now, the part that lost me is that it's a sorcery. If this card was an instant, it would be playable.
If it was an instant, it would be uncommon.
This should have been an instant, man. It would have been good.
I would settle for 4 mana. Draw to proliferate
instant. Yeah. I thought about that option too, but I like sticking to my guns here. Draw 3, proliferate for 5. They needed to be inspired when they made this card.
They did.
Because this is fairly uninspired.
Yep.
All right. So that actually wraps it up for blue. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let us know if we got anything wrong. What is your favorite blue card of the set for Pauper? Where do you think it's going to go? What decks do you think are going to be impacted? Let us know down below. Keep your eyes on the channel. I'm going to post the rest of the review videos just about as soon as they're ready. So those are going to be coming out all through the next week. As usual, guys, goodbye forever. Unless I see you next time.